of. You're going to love this one. This is going to be the best, probably the best day. Again, I want to preface this with, if you really want to learn how to sell your experience, you'll want to stick with me for the full 5 days, so that you can get the most out of this. And you'll get opportunities on day 4 and 5 to submit your questions. You'll want to start submitting your questions. I will take questions through for Thursday through probably through like 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, so I can have the questions ready for Thursday. And then same thing for Thursday for Friday, right? So like 8 p.m. Central Time, if you submit your questions, I'll be able to answer them on Friday. Right. So all free, everything free. I'm not asking for your emails or anything. You can literally just DM me your target role, your question, and what your typical response would be. If you don't have a typical response, or that's fine, but I do prefer, so I can help guide you specifically what makes sense for you. I'm all about tailored response. I don't like one size fits all. That's why this impact model is really good. So let me just make sure any questions. If anybody's here and this was helpful yesterday, let me know. Let me know. That will be amazing. Okay, so I'm just pulling this up, see if we have any questions. So I'm so excited because I think I shared with y'all yesterday that I am updating my curriculum. And so I have the comments up here. So if anybody has any comments or questions, definitely feel free to drop your questions throughout this session today. So I am updating my curriculum, and I'm super excited because now I'm finally getting everything out of my little brain that I do like with my one-on-one coaching. So my clients get even faster and faster results. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I just did kind of like my negotiation strategies, some trends essentially that I'm seeing that are preventing people, that I'm seeing in the market. People saying they're getting lowballed offers and things like that. So how do you prevent all that? And the impact model was part of that, right? So it was one of the things I was really excited about. And then I'll get into the teaching for today. But one of the things I was really, 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 really excited about was I think a lot of people forget that a lot of the basis for negotiation and determination for your salary actually is happening through the interview process. Like where you're basically selling yourself, right? Like the definition, like when you're selling yourself, you're basically every word you say is stacking up to that dollar amount, right? And everything you don't say is pulling back on that amount, right? Or keeping you kind of steady, if you will. So the impact model has been pivotal for my clients to walk away at the top of the range or above the range, to get offers like really fast, like all the different things. So this is critical. And so I wanted to do today specifically because the number one question that I'm seeing that's tripping people up outside of like, what's your salary expectation? Stuff like that. Or even tell me about yourself. I know that trips up a lot of people. But excuse me, the number one question that's most important right now is the direct experience question. So you'll get a job and it'll be, HR, mergers and acquisitions, right? And so they're going to be like, okay, so tell me about your direct experience in mergers and acquisitions. And so if you've not had the direct title, kind of struggle with that. If you haven't exactly done it, but you can and you're excited, then that can be frustrating, right? Or if they ask about what's your direct experience, I've seen companies go so specific that it's actually almost crazy, where they're like, tell me about your exact experience leading a sales team in Idaho and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, now y'all get a little crazy. But my process helps support you with that. Now, I wanted to start with this one because this particular question too, you're going to want to sit with, in terms of how you answer. And again, it's not, this is meant to be a guide. This is meant to support you, but you will need feedback, right? And to make sure it's actually landing. So that's again why I want to make sure that I put in those 2 days of support, because this is tricky, and and if you don't do it right, it's going to make you sound like you are lying or hiding your overall experience, right? But yeah, if they ask you a question, tell me about your direct H&M experience, and then your brain is like, I haven't done that, so and so there's sometimes they're rambling, or sometimes you feel frustrated, and then a lot of times you get drilled with a lot more questions because they're trying to figure out, like, okay, what did you actually do? And so, yeah, it's good to just be prepared and ready for these very specific questions. Some of them, tell me about a very specific leader that you supported, but maybe you've never done that, but you have supported other leaders. Change management is a big one. If you're going after a payroll role, right? Like, tell me about your direct experience, like helping payroll for, again, I'm just making up, sales team. I keep saying sales team because the first thing comes to mind, but it could be anything, right? Like anything. Or tell me about a time you supported someone on a site in North Carolina, right? Like, it can literally be that specific. And so, again, y'all are either freezing or y'all are going, whoa, word vomit. Anxiety's on 20, and it's not happening. Or, the reason, some of the other thoughts that I know y'all have is, well, my manager did it, so I can't say like I did it, right? So you have that thought. And or you're like, I don't have a certification, like I can't say I did anything project management, like I've never had a certification or anything like that. Okay, so a couple of things with that. You don't have to be the one that was assigned to the project in order to talk about your involvement or to give yourself credit in about your direct experience. So that's one thing. The second thing is, y'all are thinking way too black and white around some of these questions. And it partly is because the questions are forcing you that way. So I just want to empathize. Like, I don't think these are the right way to ask these types of questions, but that's the market that we're in for a few reasons. One, companies have so much supply of talent, they're trying to weed people out pretty fast, right? And so they go with a direct question. I don't love this approach, but again, that's where we are. So I want you to be able to solve for that. But you also have to be a bit open and black and white. Two, or not so black and white. Two, a lot of y'all think that you know what the question actually is asking. So if somebody's asking you about your direct project manager experience, all y'all brains, there's levels to project management. Your brain goes to, well, I have not used the agile method. I'm like, okay, but like, you did help with 2 office moves, right? You did help with like an audit project, right? Like, so there's so many other ways to talk about project management. And you're like, but okay, but like, I didn't do XYZ part of the okay, how do you know that's what they need or what they desire? You don't. You're making an assumption, right? You're making an assumption. What if, go with me, what if the exact experience that you have is all they need, is what they're looking for, is what they're excited about, but you are making an assumption that there's no way. So then there's no way that your brain will take you through what you could be talking about, right? Okay. If you think about it, right, I'm gonna stick with the project management example because this is probably the easiest one to explain. But you have managed timelines. You have done and worked with stakeholders. You have taken problems from, like, because there was an IT issue that stopped the project from moving forward, right? Like, you have done all of those things, right? You helped with a policy change. I'm sure there was a project involved in that, right? Figuring out what the new policy had to be, doing the research, partnering with like external people, benchmarking, da 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 da. That time you revamped the whole talent acquisition strategy project. You're just not calling it that. You're not calling it a strategy because you're like, I ain't a strategy. Come on, y'all. Y'all have got to give yourselves a little bit more credit. It doesn't have to feel like a lie. You have to just know, you have to understand how you take credit in an authentic way. And you have to do it with giving the right details, right? And so that's what the impact model helps with. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so audit, office move, some type of system rollout. I know y'all done. Open enrollment can be a project. Onboarding of a team of 20, or you have 5 people at one time, or you did immigration stuff. Like anything can be turned into a project. And that's why I think in general, in terms of direct experience, if you actually think enough, you will understand any skill that they're asking for. You have done it in some capacity, even if they're asking about employee relations, right? Because all I see employee relations as is you're a person that can ask the right questions, you can lead with empathy, you can review policy or partner with a legal partner, because we are not lawyers, then you can make a recommendation. That's it, literally. It'll be nice to sprinkle in if you can have tough conversations, having an investigator hat, but like you have done that in some capacity, especially if you're interested in employee relations, right? Like the true definition of what employee relations actually is, right? But because part of the problem is some of y'all don't know the right definitions, right? So when you're thinking about project management, you actually don't know the right definition of project management, the simplistic form of project management and what people need, the simplistic form of employee relations and what they actually need, right? Like you just think employee relations, law, legal, lawyer, project management, agile, right? That's all y'all are overall thinking, right? And so that is holding y'all back very significantly and talking about your direct experience. Okay. What else I want to tell you guys? Let's see. Okay. When you learn how to use the impact model, and there's going to be the impact model, and then there's going to be kind of like your opening statement for the impact model. That's going to be important to understand. Again, this is one of the most complex answers. That's why I'm starting with that. I'm sorry if you are not ready for complex support, this might not be the live for you. But if you have been struggling to land a role, this is the live that you need to stay on, boo. You need to stay on this live so that you can actually answer the questions and stop getting drilled and stop getting offers of 120K when you know you're supposed to be getting 170K offer. Seriously. I had a client text me last night. She's like, I think she's going to be close to 200K salary based on when we started. And her original goal was 80K when we started. I was like, girl, no. With my impact model, you gonna get what you need, right? She got a very significant increase. And because she is confident about her ability, right, she can move forward. I've had clients too where they'll be like, okay, tell me about your direct experience with instructional design. And like, I ain't never done no instructional design. Like I partner with instructional designers. But again, it's about taking a step back and really understanding, okay, what do they actually need for instructional design? Make sure I don't go on my brain and make assumptions about what they actually mean. And I know a lot of you are like, okay, but instructional design is like there's structural design. No. Y'all are looking at these job descriptions and making too many assumptions without truly understanding what is actually needed. But all you got to do is go back to the basics. What's the simplistic definition? How can I answer that? And a lot of y'all just forget that y'all have done certain things, right? So I was just talking to a client actually right before this call for this live, and we're talking about direct experience too around like project management and change management and acquisitions. And she was like, yeah, I've never done acquisition. I was like, I'm pretty sure on our first or second, third session, you mentioned that your company had gone through an acquisition. And I don't forget. That's why I love working with my clients. I don't forget nothing. I be clocking exactly what y'all tell me about y'all experience. And I remember, and I'm like, didn't you tell me that you did? And she was like, yes. Every company has had an acquisition. I'm like, yes. So a lot of y'all are just either forgetting or dismissing. And I was like, and your role supported acquisitions through X, Y, and Z. And she was like, yes. I was like, okay, cool. Right. So, okay. So when we're thinking about walking someone through and using the impact model, the first thing is you want to have kind of like your opening kind of statement to talk about, your overall experience that you bring. So in terms of project management, I challenge you to think about when are the times that you have done some level of project management. So if they say, tell me about your direct experience in project management, being like, okay, What are the skill sets of project management, stakeholders, timelines, deadlines, all the different things. And then you just talk about, through my career, I have had a plethora of opportunities to work on helping from beginning to end to support different types of programs or projects or whatever it is, right? I'm really one of the top three areas that I'm really good at when it comes to helping from end to end would be stakeholder management, coming up with like some of the more critical communications, and then also anything that has to do with like office moves or moving from one building to another. I've done that a lot of times over my career. Okay. But I would love to walk you through one specific example and highlight, how I've done that. Okay, so if you remember the structure, so that's kind of your opening statement. And again, I encourage you to really think about for the direct question, whether it's employee relations or if it's immigration matters or if it's, I'm trying to think of other examples that y'all, those are the big ones that y'all like, are really like intimidated by in project management and all the different things. Um, but yeah, I'm curious if there's anybody here live, like if there's any other ones, because I would love to give some more examples. But so yeah, so if you remember the impact model, right? You start with the impact slash metric, then it's the 4 P's: the problem, people you partner with, processes that you solved, eliminated, whatever, and then your position. And then you talk about a challenge that you had to overcome. And then you talk about, tying it back to the organization. Okay, so tying it back, wrapping it up in a bow. You're basically putting a little bow at the end of the kind of the story. So when I think about like a project that I actually did, I did a PTO project. So if I got the question, tell me about your direct experience with project management. And so I was share with, there was a time where I helped my organization increase our overall utilization of PTO and supported a revamping and changing going from a sick time policy to a PTO structure, right? This was the project that I led. Okay. So I would have my little intro that I didn't do here, but I would probably say something like, yeah, over my time in my career, I've done program design for HR. I've done lots of different projects that relates to policy changes. I've also done things like da 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 da. And then, but I would love to share a specific example with you. Okay. So that's going to help you. That's more so specific for people who really don't feel like they have any direct experience. It's going to force you to really think about where your experiences might come from. That's the why there. And then the impact model, again, you started with my impact. And then metric wise, I can throw in there that I increased my utilization. I don't remember the exact number, so that's why I never really share the number. But I know I also saved my company $250K. So I always bring that in. So yep, I was able to save the company 250K. Again, we start with metric and impact because that's how we think. Headlines, hooks are all like this. STAR method, you start with the situation, you lose your audience. Back when I was an HR generalist, there was a time where, our company wanted me to relook at our PTO policy. And then we wanted to make sure that y'all go too much into the story. That's why y'all fail at this, right? That's why at the end of the day, the manager is asking a lot of follow-up questions. Okay, so moving on. Problem. The biggest problem was that we would have our employee engagement survey was saying that people were unable to take vacation. Okay. On top of that, we were looking for ways to support our P&L, right? And it seemed like a great way to support our P&L. Nobody was also using sick time, right? The utilization rate was like something crazy low, right? And so we wanted to encourage our teams to actually use their PTO policy from an engagement standpoint. So that was a problem I was trying to solve. Okay. So then we go into people. I had to partner with finance. I partnered with IT. I partnered with an external consulting agency, Aon, to help me with the policies. I also partner with our manager teams. Okay. That is important because They want to know you're going to collaborate no matter what. So a lot of you are like, oh yeah, I'm a good collaborator, but they want to know like with who, how, and all the things. So this gives you an opportunity to talk about that. All right. If anybody's here and they're sticking with me, let me know. Or is your brain hurting? I'm like still checking, I'm trying to see if there's any comments or questions. No comments or questions. Okay. People, process. So what's your process? So your process, again, I recommend 3, no more than 3. And you can talk about any part of the process you want. Okay, whatever's important to the story, whatever you want to share. So I usually talk about for that particular one, there was a lot of partnership with our external consulting organization, and we reviewed and analyzed across 20 states, right? So that showcases so many things about me. So that's why I choose that. The second piece of the process that I think is important was the implementation of the new policy within our ADP system, right? Very technical, something I had never done before, and that was pretty complex. And then the third part was like being the blueprint or harmonizing this for our larger conglomerate. So I talk about that. I could also talk about the fact that, right, like as part of the process was revamping the entire PTO structure, right? I could talk about that and getting buy-in. Like I could talk about any parts of the process. I could talk about creating the rollout, the communication plan. I could talk about that. Like there's some, you can just pick the top 3, and you can flex those, right, as depending on whatever else kind of question they're asking. Okay. Okay, so then my position, I led this from end to end. I really want you to choose examples where you actually did support like your top examples. A lot of you are choosing different examples because you're like, okay, well, so like for me, I might be like, okay, well, they don't care about PTO, like it's mergers and acquisitions. Like I'm gonna try to focus on something that's more mergers and acquisitions. No, this is still relevant, right? Like, and I have the opportunity to tie it together and make it relevant at the end. Okay, with the T. So instead, you want to make sure that you are just telling it like it is, telling the true story. Okay. C, challenge would be C would be challenge. So you have to talk about your overall challenge that you have overcome so that you can give some perspective to how do you critically think. So one of the things, and a lot of y'all avoid this because you're like, I don't want to make it sound like anything went bad or went wrong. Yes, you do. You want to make sure they know you ran into problems, but you were able to overcome it. So I always talk about the challenge that I overcame in this particular example was the integration, the ADP integration took way longer than we had anticipated. It was more involved than we had anticipated. There was a lot of testing and sandboxing and all the different things. And so one of the lessons I learned from that was that we had to build in time in the future for any type of like system change or policy change that involves systems, making sure we had enough time for the rollout, right? So that shows me as a critical thinker, as somebody who learns from lessons, and that, because we're human, right? And then the last piece is tying it to either the company, the industry, or the role itself. So if the question was, tell me about your direct project management experience, again, I could just like tie it all together and be like, yeah, like I know that when it comes to project management, there are multiple steps that we and phases that we have to understand. As I've mentioned, there was the system rollout, there was the policy kind of reevaluation, there was partnering with external partners, there was also, the creating the whole phase plan, communication plan. And so I have that direct experience to be able to support any project from start to finish because I've been successful in doing that, right? Even if it's across multiple states, right? So I'm bringing that back to them and tying it in a bow. Star method doesn't do that at all. CAR method doesn't do that at all. You kind of end with the results and you're not connecting the dot why this makes sense for the role. So, and you can do this for any question. This is why my model works for any question. So even if they didn't ask me direct experience question in whatever, in like project management, if they ask me, tell me about your direct experience in employee relations, right? I could find ways to make this example work and I would tie it in at the end. Like what were some of the employee relation things that maybe came up? Right. And this is so much easier than trying to think of examples on the spot. I have my 5 examples, as I mentioned in day 1 yesterday. And then I just keep those and I reuse them as it makes sense for the particular example. And the T helps you do that. right? The T helps you do that. Okay. No, it's a lot of information. Stick with me. It's only a lot of information though. This is why, though, interviewing feels so hard, because these are the questions that you need to answer for the interviewer, and they're not saying that. They're not saying that. They're not telling you that these are the questions they're actually evaluating for. If I say, tell me about your direct experience in project management, or you would probably be like, yeah, one time I led a project and, what I did was pull together the PTO policy. And when I think about PTO policy, or when I think about, project management, one of the things I do is I evaluate, I ask questions, I make sure that it's what the leaders need. You notice I didn't say any of that, right? It's too broad. It's not giving all the detail that they're actually looking for, right? The way the impact model works is you actually answer the questions they care about. And so when they ask you, when you give that very broad response, they're like, okay. And then they're asking more questions, or they're just moving on. And then you're like, body language. Then you're like, okay, the body language wasn't great. And they didn't, yeah, because they didn't get the actual questions answered. There are 7 real questions that they're asking, but they're not saying that. And that's why I'm like, I gotta tell the people, because y'all are having existential crisis, making these big career changes that you don't actually want to make. Like, I'm all about career pivots, obviously, but like, you're making career changes that you actually don't want to make just because you don't know how to answer questions. You don't know how to sell your experience and tell them, okay, I've been around the block. I've done this. If you put a budget in front of me, even though I maybe haven't owned a budget, like, this is how you explain that, right? This is how you explain how you can do that. Okay. All right. Any questions? I'm going to hop off. Gotta go get some lunch. Any questions? Is this helpful? Let me know in the DMs. So submit your direct experience question to me in the DM. I would go ahead and get that done today if possible. Don't overthink it, y'all. Just tell me. I've seen it all. I've seen everything. I can clean it up in like 1 minute. You'll get your response, and I'll be sharing those responses, right? I won't share your name or anything, but I will share the responses for everybody to hear and to benefit from. Okay. So submit your questions. Let me know your answers to your direct experience ones. If you're going after an HRBP role, they're probably going to ask you, tell me about your direct experience as an HRBP or a business partner, or partnering with business leaders, right? If you're going after an HRIS role, tell me about your direct experience with HRIS. Those are the questions they're going to be asking. If you're going after a talent acquisition role, tell me about your direct experience with blah, blah, blah. So just pick that question, and then you want to go ahead and you want to try to answer that. And then I can help you put it in the impact formula and what to say and what not to say. Okay. Because another thing y'all are saying is, well, I haven't had that direct experience, but here's what I've done that's similar. That doesn't work either. You literally cut your credibility off in 2 seconds. They don't want to hear that. Don't want you to lie, but I also want you to be better at understanding how to articulate it, how to actually sell your experience. Okay, I don't see any questions. Y'all quiet. Y'all quiet. Okay, I hope this was helpful. And I hope to see some more requests in the DMs. Try to get me your answer by tomorrow, 8 p.m. Central Time. And then I will share them. All right, y'all. It's been a pleasure. And I'm happy to be here tomorrow. We're going to be talking about, I forgot what I have for tomorrow. What's my tomorrow one? I'm going to tell y'all. I said direct experience. Oh, the rambling. How to stop rambling. I think is it. How to stop rambling, and some other kind of like things that I'm seeing that that you want to avoid, and how the impact model will help you through that. Okay. All right. Have a good day. See y'all.